The Whitestone Grand gleamed like a palace under the Manhattan rain. Inside, marble floors shimmered under golden light, and the air carried the faint scent of jasmine and money. Andrew Brennan strode through the revolving doors with a confidence only the rich could afford. His arm was wrapped around the waist of a woman half his age, Tessa Cole, her perfume sweet and expensive, her laugh soft and calculated. "5-star privacy," Andrew murmured with a smirk. "You'll love it here." Tessa smiled up at him, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her cheek. "You always know where to take me." Of course he did. Andrew knew every corner of New York that promised discretion. He'd built his fortune in construction, towers of glass and steel. But lately he preferred to build illusions. To his wife, he was the perfect businessman on constant work trips. To the world he was charming. To Tessa he was powerful. The lobby buzzed with quiet opulence. Men in tailored suits, women in evening gowns, a pianist playing faint notes of Moon River. Andrew approached the front desk, tapping his black Amex card on the counter. "Reservation under Brennan," he said. The young concierge smiled. "Of course, Mr. Brennan. Give me a moment." As she typed, Andrew heard faint whispers from 2 employees nearby. "Did you hear? The new owner's visiting tonight. Yeah, they say she's some big name in hospitality." "Tough, smart, beautiful too," Andrew smirked, half amused. Another heiress with a hobby, he thought. Buying hotels for bragging rights. Tessa leaned closer, whispering, "You think she'll show up?" Andrew's voice dripped with arrogance. "Doesn't matter. Every hotel opens its doors for me," the concierge returned, handing over a gold room key card. "Penthouse suite, Mr. Brennan. Enjoy your stay." Andrew took it, twirling the card between his fingers. "I always do." He placed a casual hand at Tessa's waist and turned to walk toward the elevators. Then the voice, calm, feminine, familiar, cutting. Through the music like ice through silk. "Andrew Brennan, what exactly are you doing?" He froze. The pianist's hands faltered on the keys. The hum of conversation died instantly. Slowly, Andrew turned around. Standing near the center of the lobby, framed by the chandelier's golden light, was Charlotte Hayes, his wife. She was breathtaking, not in the way of beauty made for desire, but of elegance carved from control. Her black dress fit perfectly, her hair pinned up with precision. The only thing sharper than her heels was the calm in her eyes. "Charlotte," Andrew stammered. What are you doing here?" She took a measured step forward. "I could ask you the same thing," she said. "But I already know the answer." Tessa blinked, her voice trembling. "Wait, you're his wife?" Charlotte's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I am, for now." The room was so silent that even the rain outside felt loud. Andrew tried to recover, forcing a chuckle. "Listen, this isn't—" Charlotte cut him off, her tone level, almost too calm. "Save it. I came here to greet the hotel's first guest under new ownership." Andrew frowned. "New ownership?" She nodded slowly. "That's right. As of this morning, the Whitestone Grand belongs to Hayes Hospitality Group." The realization hit like cold water. Andrew's mouth opened, but no words came out. Tessa's face turned pale. "Oh my God!" Charlotte's gaze shifted to her. Not cruel, but steady. Like a judge delivering a sentence. "You should probably leave, Miss Cole, unless you enjoy being photographed next to a married man in my hotel." Tessa's breath caught. She looked at Andrew, searching for something in his eyes, maybe a sign that he'd protect her. But there was nothing there, just shame and fear. Without a word, she grabbed her purse and hurried toward the exit, heels clicking against marble like the countdown of a life ending. Charlotte turned back to Andrew. "You've always liked grand entrances," she said softly. "But I prefer grand exits," he swallowed hard. "Charlotte, can we talk?" "Please, not here." Her expression didn't change. "Here is perfect. Everyone can finally see what I've been living with." "Don't do this," he whispered. "Not in front of them." "I'm not doing anything, Andrew." she said, stepping closer. You did. For a moment, no one moved. The chandeliers glimmered above them like frozen stars. Andrew looked around, hoping the ground would open and swallow him. Then Charlotte turned to the staff, her voice clear and steady. Cancel Mr. Brennan's reservation, and make sure his name never appears in this hotel again. Yes, Ms. Hayes, the concierge stammered. Andrew's world seemed to collapse in slow motion. Every whisper, every stare in the lobby pressed down on him like gravity. He took a shaky breath. Charlotte, please. We can fix this. She looked at him one last time, her eyes unreadable. You once told me this hotel was the perfect place to start over. You were right. A pause. I just didn't realize I'd be starting over without you. And then she walked past him, graceful, untouchable, leaving the scent of jasmine and finality in her wake. Andrew stood there, gold room key still clutched in his hand, its edges biting into his palm. He looked down at it, then toward the doors where she'd disappeared, and for the first time in years he had nothing to say. Outside, the rain continued to fall, quiet, relentless, washing away what little remained of his pride. 2 years before that night at the Whitestone Grand, Charlotte Hayes was the kind of woman people trusted instantly. Her voice had warmth, her smile invited confidence, and her calm made chaos seem manageable. For nearly a decade, she had been the quiet force behind her husband's success, balancing budgets, smoothing investor dinners, remembering birthdays he forgot at 34. She'd already built a name for herself in the hospitality world. She'd managed one of the most exclusive boutique hotels in Manhattan, earning praise for her grace under pressure. Then she gave it all up. Family first, Andrew had said, when he wanted to expand Brennan & Co. into a larger construction empire. You don't need the stress, Charlotte. We'll have a better life if we focus on my business. And she believed him. She always had, so she left her job. She traded spreadsheets for dinner parties, late-night planning sessions for late-night waiting. Andrew promised that one day, when things settled, she could start her own brand, something smaller, softer, just for fun. But the settling never came. At first, she didn't notice the changes. Andrew worked longer hours. He started traveling more. He became sharper, impatient, dismissive when she asked about his trips. You wouldn't understand, Lottie, he'd say, using the nickname that used to make her heart warm. It's business. Boring stuff. She would smile, nod, and pretend it didn't sting. Their dinners grew quieter. His phone stayed face down. He no longer laughed at her small jokes. Sometimes, when he kissed her goodbye in the mornings, she could still smell the cologne he never wore at home. One evening, while doing the laundry, she found a hotel receipt in the pocket of his jacket. The Metropolitan Plaza, deluxe suite, 2 nights. She froze. The date was last weekend, when he told her he was in Boston for a client meeting. She stared at the paper for a long time, her mind refusing to connect the dots. Then she folded it neatly, slid it back into the pocket, and kept folding shirts as if nothing had changed. That night, she lay awake, listening to the rhythm of his breathing beside her, wondering how long he had been lying like this, so close, and yet so far away. A week later, she met her old mentor, Olivia Park. For lunch, Olivia was now a respected corporate attorney, sharp-eyed and blunt. She studied Charlotte's face for barely a minute before saying, "You've found something, haven't you?" Charlotte blinked. "I don't know what you mean." Olivia leaned back. "You always knew what you were worth, Charlotte." "Don't let him make you forget," Charlotte smiled faintly. "It's not that simple." "It never is," Olivia said. "But it's always necessary." That conversation stayed with her. Over the next few months, Charlotte began to watch. Quietly, carefully, she didn't accuse. She didn't cry. She learned. She noticed how Andrew's credit card statements changed, 5-star restaurants in cities he wasn't supposed to be in, hotel charges under company names she didn't recognize. One morning, she went through the emails on their shared laptop and found a reservation confirmation sent from a private address. The name under Guest 2 was Tessa Cole. Her hands trembled, but not from shock, only from clarity. Every small lie now fit perfectly into place. That night, she poured herself a glass of wine, opened her notebook, and wrote 4 words on a blank page: "Plan for my freedom." For weeks, Charlotte lived 2 lives. By day, she was the polished wife, the perfect hostess at charity galas, smiling beside Andrew as photographers flashed their cameras. By night, she was a strategist, meeting quietly with lawyers, brokers, and consultants, gathering what she would need to rebuild her life once she left his. Olivia helped her set up the first holding company in secret, Hayes Hospitality Group. They started small, renovating a rundown coastal inn in Connecticut under a different name. Charlotte oversaw every detail: the design, the service, the staff training. It was everything she had missed: the rhythm, the purpose, the pride. When the inn opened 6 months later, it sold out its first week. Reviewers called it a hidden gem run with rare intuition. She read the article in the quiet of her home office, a small smile tugging at her lips. Andrew didn't even notice. He was too busy texting someone on his phone, laughing softly in the next room. That was when Charlotte realized she no longer needed to catch him. She had already outgrown him. The betrayal no longer burned. It simply illuminated the truth. She had spent years shrinking herself to fit into his world when she could have built her own. The next morning, she slipped off her wedding ring and placed it in a drawer, not out of anger, but resolve. The cold imprint it left on her finger felt like the beginning of something new. As the city woke up outside her window, Charlotte Hayes made a quiet promise to herself. "I won't confront him until I'm ready to walk away with everything he took from me, and more." The following morning, sunlight spilled over Manhattan like liquid gold. From the top floor of the Whitestone Grand, Charlotte Hayes watched the city awaken below her. She stood by the glass wall of her office, calm, poised, unreadable. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Brennan has arrived. Shall I send him in?" Charlotte's lips curved slightly. "Yes, thank you." The door opened. Andrew Brennan stepped in. He looked different from the man who had strutted into her hotel the night before. His arrogance dimmed, his face pale from a night without sleep. He tried to smile, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Charlotte, I don't even know where to start." "Start with the truth," she replied, gesturing toward the chair across from her desk. He hesitated before sitting down. "Look, what happened last night? It wasn't what it looked like." Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "Really? You were checking into a penthouse suite with a woman who calls you baby in her text messages, and somehow that means nothing?" Andrew opened his mouth, then closed it again, his hands clenched together in his lap. Charlotte leaned forward slightly. Her tone was calm, too calm. "I've spent 12 years of my life believing in you, Andrew. I believed in your work, your promises, your ambition. But last night, I stopped believing in your excuses." He winced, his pride cracking beneath her composure. "I made mistakes, all right? But it doesn't have to end like this. We can fix it." A soft knock on the door interrupted him. Olivia Park entered, perfectly pressed, grey suit, files in hand, her expression neutral, but sharp. Andrew stiffened. "You brought a lawyer?" Charlotte folded her hands neatly on the desk. I brought clarity. Olivia set down a folder and opened it, revealing documents. Neatly organized, precise. "Mr. Brennan," she began, "my client has prepared a dissolution of marriage agreement. All assets have been accounted for and reassigned in accordance with her contributions and legal ownership." Andrew's eyes widened. Her contributions? What does that even mean? Charlotte's gaze didn't waver. "It means that while you were busy building your empire on lies, I was quietly building my own, one that doesn't crumble when you fall." Olivia slid a stack of papers across the desk. "Ms. Hayes retains full ownership of all real estate, investment portfolios, and intellectual property under Hayes Hospitality Group. Mr. Brennan will keep his personal vehicle and retirement fund." Andrew stared at the documents, speechless. "That's everything. You're taking everything." Charlotte's tone was icy calm. "No, Andrew. I'm taking back what was already mine." He rose from his chair, his voice breaking. "Charlotte, please." "You can't mean this." She stood as well, meeting his height, her presence steady as stone. "I meant every word." "You took my trust, my time, my name, and you traded them for cheap thrills in hotel rooms I paid for. I'm simply collecting what's left of me," he exhaled shakily. "I didn't plan any of this to hurt you." "Of course not," she said quietly. "You just didn't think I'd ever be strong enough to stop you." He paced the office, running a hand through his hair, his voice desperate. "We can start over. We were good once, weren't we?" "We could," Charlotte interrupted softly but firmly. "The woman who believed in you doesn't exist anymore." "You killed her, one lie at a time." Her words hit harder than a shout could have. Andrew turned toward Olivia, voice trembling with anger. "You're really going through with this?" Olivia didn't flinch. "Mr. Brennan, your wife has fulfilled every legal and ethical requirement. This separation is irreversible." He let out a bitter laugh. "She planned this," Charlotte nodded, "for months. While you were hiding secrets in your phone, I was preparing mine." For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind that hums right before something breaks. Andrew's voice dropped to a whisper. "You used to love me." Charlotte looked at him, really looked, and for the briefest second, a flicker of the past crossed her face. Then it was gone. "Yes," she said. "And that's why I'm letting you go." "Love doesn't live where respect has died." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "So this is it?" "This," she replied, her voice clear, "is me ending what should have ended long ago." Olivia handed him the final document, the divorce. "Petition. You'll receive the official copy tomorrow." "Morning," she said. Andrew didn't take it. He stood there, staring at Charlotte, as if trying to memorize the face of a life he'd taken for granted. She broke the silence first. "You can leave the papers here. I know how you hate dealing with details." Her tone wasn't cruel, it was final. Andrew's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He walked toward the door, stopping just before he left. "You win, Charlotte." She didn't look up from her desk. "No, Andrew. I simply stopped losing." The door closed behind him. Charlotte exhaled slowly, her fingers trembling only for a moment before she steadied them against the desk. Olivia gathered the papers into her briefcase. "You handled that better than most people would?" Charlotte gave a small, tired smile. "That's the thing about storms, Olivia. The longer you stand in them, the less they scare you." Outside, the city gleamed in the afternoon sun. The skyline was hers now. Every window, every floor, every light, a reflection of the woman she had become. For the first time in years, Charlotte Hayes felt the weight lift from her chest. Freedom didn't feel loud or wild, it felt quiet, and it finally felt like home. The next evening, the sky over Manhattan was bruised violet, the last traces of daylight dissolving into glass and steel. Charlotte sat alone in the hotel's private lounge, a quiet corner she had designed herself. The air smelled faintly of cedar and jasmine, the kind of calm that made people lower their voices when they entered. She wasn't expecting company, not anymore, but the soft click of the door made her lift her head. Andrew Brennan stood there, still in yesterday's suit, looking like he hadn't slept. His tie hung loose, his eyes hollow. "Charlotte," he said quietly, almost pleading.
"Can we talk?"
Her gaze drifted back to the window.
"We already did." He stepped closer. "Not like that, not
In front of lawyers. "Just us," Charlotte sighed, her tone composed but tired. "There's no us left to talk about." "There has to be," he insisted. 12 years doesn't just vanish overnight. She turned to face him finally.
"No, Andrew.
It doesn't vanish.
It rots. Slowly, painfully, until all that's left is the smell of what once was." His face fell.
You don't mean that. I mean every word. He took another step toward her, desperation creeping into his voice. I made mistakes. I know that. But we had something real. You loved me once. Charlotte's expression softened, but only slightly. I did.
"I loved you so deeply that I forgot who I was without you." She paused, her voice low, trembling just enough to reveal the truth behind her strength. "But that woman is gone now, Andrew."
She died the day I found out who you really were. He clenched his fists. You think walking away makes you stronger? You're just proving you can't forgive. Charlotte shook her head slowly. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting.
"I forgive you, but I'll never let you hurt me again." He looked at her.
Helpless, lost. A man who had always believed control was his birthright. Do you really think you're better off without me? She laughed quietly. Not bitterly, but with a strange kind of peace. Better off?
"Andrew, I finally sleep through the night. I finally breathe without wondering where you are."
That's not better. That's freedom. Her words silenced him. For a moment, the only sound was the rain tapping softly against the glass. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing.
"I didn't mean to destroy what we had." "You didn't destroy it," she said. "You revealed it." That made him stop.
What's that supposed to mean? Charlotte rose from her seat, walking slowly toward him. Her heels clicked softly on the marble, each step deliberate. You didn't ruin a perfect marriage. You showed me it never existed. Her voice deepened, steady. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice. Giving, bending, staying. But love isn't about losing yourself to keep someone else whole. She stopped right in front of him now, close enough that he could see the faint shimmer of tears that never quite fell. Your betrayal didn't destroy me.
"Andrew," she inhaled, her voice breaking.
Then hardening again, it freed me. He looked at her like a man seeing something precious slip through his fingers. Charlotte, please? She shook her head. No, don't beg for a past that doesn't exist anymore. He took a shaky breath, his voice small. You've changed. Yes, she said softly. That's what surviving does. Her tone carried neither triumph nor cruelty, only truth. She looked at him one last time, as if memorizing the man she had once built her life around. You should go now. The place isn't yours anymore. He hesitated. And where will you go? Charlotte smiled faintly, turning back toward the window. Everywhere I was never allowed to. Andrew stood there for a few seconds longer, then nodded silently. He left the room without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft, final click, the kind of sound that marked the end of something too heavy to carry any longer. Charlotte exhaled slowly, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. Stronger, steadier, freer. The woman looking back wasn't the broken wife anymore. She was the architect of her own freedom. As the rain outside turned to a gentle drizzle, she whispered to herself, "Sometimes the fire doesn't burn you.
It forges you. And with that, Charlotte Hayes picked up her phone,
Opened a folder labeled Hayes Group Expansion Plan, and smiled. The quiet, knowing smile of a woman who had finally turned pain into power. A month later, New York had moved on, as it always did. Headlines that once flashed Brennan Construction's golden couple were now buried under new scandals, new names, new money. Andrew Brennan was no longer one of them. He stood in a one-bedroom apartment on the Lower East Side, surrounded by cardboard boxes that smelled of dust and regret. The marble counters, the private driver, the tailored suits. Gone. All that remained was a man staring at his reflection in a cracked bathroom mirror, wondering when exactly he'd stopped recognizing the person looking back. The news networks had eaten him alive, CEOs. Extramarital scandal leads to empire collapse, Brennan. Construction facing bankruptcy after internal. Betrayal, clients withdrew, investors ghosted. Even his own employees avoided eye contact when he came to collect his personal things. And through it all, Charlotte never said a single word to the press. Her silence was its own kind of power. Calm, deliberate, merciless. He still kept his wedding ring. Not on his finger, but in the drawer beside his bed, next to unpaid bills and a stack of court papers. Sometimes he took it out, turning it between his fingers until the guilt felt heavy enough to crush him. He thought about calling her, not to beg, but to apologize, yet every time he picked up the phone, he realized there was nothing left to say that could matter. The last message he had from her read only, "You'll find peace when you stop chasing the things that broke you." He hadn't understood it then. Now he did. But it was far too late. Across the city, in a glass tower that caught the morning light like a diamond, Charlotte Hayes stood by the window of her new office. The Hayes Hospitality Group logo shimmered behind her. Elegant,
minimalist, powerful. She had signed the paperwork last week,
officially acquiring the third hotel in her growing empire. Her assistant had asked if she wanted a press conference. She'd smiled and said, "No, I'd rather let the results speak," the sound of quiet success. That was what she lived for now. No applause, no validation, just the steady rhythm of progress. On her desk sat a photo frame, not of her wedding, not of vacations or memories, but of her first small inn in Connecticut. The one she built in silence while pretending her marriage was still alive. The reminder that even in her darkest years, she had been building an escape. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Olivia Park.
as composed as ever, carrying a folder of legal reports. "Everything with the settlement has cleared," Olivia said.
Andrew's assets were officially transferred. He didn't contest. Charlotte nodded, expression unreadable. He's too tired to fight what he already lost. Olivia hesitated before adding, "He called me last night. Said he wanted to apologize to you." Charlotte looked out the window again, the city reflected in her eyes. "Apologies are for people who want to undo the past." "I don't," Olivia studied her quietly. "You're not angry anymore." Charlotte's lips curved faintly. "Anger kept me alive long enough to rebuild, but now I don't need it." So when Olivia left, Charlotte walked over to the floor-to-ceiling glass wall and pressed her hand lightly against the cold surface. Below her, New York pulsed, taxis flashing through intersections, people rushing to places they believed mattered. She whispered, "Not to anyone in particular. This city broke me once. But it also taught me how to rise." The words lingered in the air, delicate and powerful. Later that night, she returned home to her penthouse, the one overlooking the Hudson River. For the first time in years, it felt like her space. No arguments, no lies, no pretending. Just quiet. She made herself a cup of tea, curled up on the couch, and opened a file labeled Expansion Proposal, Hotel Nage 4. Beside it was a sticky note from her assistant that read, Potential locations, Miami, San Francisco, Seattle. Charlotte smiled faintly. Growth. It was no longer about proving Andrew wrong. It was about proving to herself that she had always been right to dream bigger. Somewhere across the river,
Andrew sat alone in a bar, half drunk.
Watching her success story play on the muted TV screen above the counter. Her face appeared for a moment, composed, radiant, powerful, under the headline, Charlotte Hayes Expands Empire, Hayes Hospitality Group, named one of NYC's fastest rising brands. He stared for a long time, then lowered his gaze. The bartender slid him another drink, but he didn't touch it. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel jealous, he just felt small and sorry. Meanwhile, Charlotte closed her laptop, set her tea down, and stepped out onto her balcony. The wind off the Hudson carried the smell of rain, cool and cleansing. She whispered softly to herself, peace doesn't come when they pay for what they did. It comes when you stop needing them to. The lights of the city flickered below, and for the first time she smiled. Not the smile of a survivor, but of someone finally living. 6 months later, the ballroom of the Hayes Whitestone Grand gleamed with golden light. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above, the champagne shimmered, and cameras flashed as New York's elite gathered to celebrate the opening of Charlotte Hayes' fourth hotel, the Hayes Signature Manhattan. A massive banner hung over the grand staircase. Where elegance meets freedom, it was more than a slogan, it was her story. Charlotte stood at the top of the staircase, draped in an ivory gown that brushed against the marble floor. Every inch of her reflected the empire she'd built from the ashes. Calm.
Radiant, unapologetically powerful. Mrs. Hayes.
The press is ready, her assistant whispered. She nodded. Turning toward the crowd below, CEOs, investors, journalists, and familiar faces from a world that once ignored her. The music softened. She raised her glass. 6 years ago, she began, her voice steady, I thought my world had ended, but sometimes endings are just disguised beginnings. Tonight isn't about success. It's about freedom. The freedom to rebuild, to forgive, and to move forward without fear. Applause rippled through the room, warm and genuine. Cameras flashed, but Charlotte's eyes weren't on them. They were fixed on someone standing quietly near the back of the crowd. Tessa Cole. The same woman who had once walked into a hotel with Andrew Brennan on her arm, her laughter like a confession. Tonight, she looked very different. Her hair was darker, her posture smaller, her expression unsure. She clutched an invitation in her hands as if afraid it might vanish. Charlotte stepped down the staircase slowly, the crowd parting as she approached. Conversations hushed. Even the orchestra seemed to pause mid-note. When they were face to face, Tessa swallowed hard. Ms. Hayes, she said, barely above a whisper.
I shouldn't have come. I just wanted to see it. To see you. Charlotte studied her, not with contempt, but with quiet consideration. Why?
She asked softly. Tessa's eyes glistened.
Because I wanted to understand how you did it.
How you moved on.
I thought if I saw it.
Maybe I'd learn how to stop being ashamed. The honesty in her voice hung in the air like fragile glass. Charlotte exhaled slowly. You've been working in marketing since leaving Brennan and Co.
Haven't you?
Tessa blinked, startled.
Yes, but how do you know?
Charlotte gave a faint smile. I keep track of people who matter to the story. Then she reached into her clutch and pulled out a slim white envelope. There's an opening at Hayes Hospitality for a director of marketing.
I think you'd be good for it. The room went still.
100 pairs of eyes turned toward them. Tessa's lips parted in disbelief.
You're offering me a job?
Charlotte's expression remained poised. I'm offering you a chance.
I don't believe in punishing people for being lost. I believe in giving them a reason to find themselves again. A single tear slipped down Tessa's cheek. After everything I did after Andrew, why would you ever help me?
Charlotte's gaze softened, her voice gentle but unwavering. Because you weren't the one who broke me. You were just part of the lesson that built me. Tessa looked down, shaking her head, speechless. You don't owe me forgiveness, Charlotte added. But if you take this job, you'll owe yourself redemption. The words struck deep, not just for Tessa, but for everyone within earshot. The murmurs in the crowd quieted completely. Finally, Tessa whispered, voice trembling.
I don't know if I deserve this, Charlotte smiled. The kind that carried wisdom.
Not pity. Deserving has nothing to do with it. Growth does, the orchestra resumed softly as if the world itself exhaled. Charlotte handed Tessa the envelope. Inside was not just an offer letter, but a handwritten note. To rebuild yourself, start where your story fell apart. Tessa pressed it to her chest, her tears falling freely now. Thank you, she whispered. Charlotte nodded once. Don't thank me. Earn it. Later that night, as guests mingled and champagne glasses clinked, Olivia Park joined Charlotte on the balcony overlooking the glittering city. You really surprised me tonight, Olivia said, with a knowing smile. Charlotte leaned against the railing.
Eyes on the skyline. Forgiveness isn't weakness, Olivia.
It's control.
And I'm done letting the past control me. Olivia clinked her glass gently against hers.
You realize she'll never forget what you did for her. That's the point, Charlotte replied. Neither will I. Below them, the city pulsed with light and music. The woman who once stood, shattered in a hotel lobby, now stood at the top of her own empire. Not with vengeance, but with grace. As the night drew to a close, Charlotte looked out over Manhattan, her city, her kingdom, and whispered to herself, second chances aren't for the ones who betrayed you. They're for the parts of yourself you thought were gone forever. And somewhere in the crowd below, Tessa looked up at her, a silent promise in her eyes. To be better, to begin again, it wasn't just a reunion. It was revelation, a full circle completed, not in anger but in peace. Midnight lingered softly over Manhattan. The celebration had ended hours ago, guests gone, music faded, champagne glasses emptied, but the glow of the Hayes signature Manhattan still shimmered against the skyline. Charlotte Hayes stood alone in the grand lobby, barefoot now, her heels resting on the marble beside her. The space was silent except for the quiet hum of air conditioning and the echo of her own heartbeat. She walked slowly across the floor, fingertips brushing the polished counter where it had all begun that night, the night she walked into a hotel lobby and found her husband, standing with another woman. The memory no longer burned, simply was a chapter she could finally close without. Trembling, she turned toward the giant glass doors, watching the reflection of herself in the mirror-like surface. No tears, no fury, no ghosts, just a woman who had built herself from the ground up. Quietly, elegantly, on her own terms. Her voice broke the silence, soft but steady. It's strange, she said to no one, how the same place can hold both your ruin and your rebirth. A cleaning staff member appeared in the distance, startled to see her. Ms. Hayes, you're still here? Charlotte smiled faintly.
Just saying goodbye.
To someone I used to be. The woman nodded politely and left, leaving Charlotte alone again in the soft, golden light. She walked to the staircase, the same one she descended earlier that evening in triumph. But this time there were no cameras, No applause. Just stillness. At the bottom step, she paused, remembering the weight of her wedding ring, the sound of her name being whispered with lies. Then she remembered something else, the sound of her own voice telling Andrew, "Your betrayal didn't destroy me."
It freed me. It still rang true.
But now it meant something deeper. Freedom, she realized, wasn't just walking away, it was staying and reclaiming what was once used to break you. Charlotte turned toward the vast windows overlooking the city. The streets glowed like rivers of gold, the horizon dusted with light. Behind her, faint laughter echoed from the staff finishing cleanup.
Life went on. Perfectly ordinary, perfectly beautiful, she whispered into the quiet. You see, Andrew?
I never needed to destroy you. You were already doing that yourself. Her tone carried no bitterness.
Only acceptance. I didn't take revenge, she added softly, a small,
peaceful smile curving her lips. I simply took back my life. She reached for the light switch on the wall, but before turning it off, she looked around one last time at the chandeliers, the marble, the view. It all shimmered with quiet pride, like a reflection of her own strength. In that moment, Charlotte didn't see wealth or success. She saw survival, refined into art. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city breathed again, alive and endless. Charlotte stepped through the glass doors and onto the sidewalk, the night air cool against her skin. Her driver waited beside the car, but she waved him off gently. "Not tonight," she said. "I'll walk." And so she did. Through the streets of Manhattan, the same city that had once humiliated her, now carrying her name on 4 golden towers. As she walked, she passed billboards and streetlights glowing in her reflection, each one whispering the same truth. She didn't win by fighting back. She won by becoming untouchable. Later, as dawn began to color the edges of the sky, Charlotte paused at a street corner and looked up. The top floor of her newest hotel gleamed faintly against the light, her initials CH engraved on the entrance plaque. A soft smile crossed her face. "Here's to every woman who was told she couldn't," she murmured, "and did anyway." Then she slipped her hands into her coat pockets and walked toward the rising sun, the city unfolding before her, vast, alive, hers. And with that, Charlotte Hayes, once a forgotten wife, now a self-made legend, disappeared into the morning light. The story of her betrayal ended not in fire, but in peace, and in that peace she found something far greater than vengeance, herself.